Clash of the Titans. The forces thus laid out and prepared, battle commenced. The war machines of the mercenaries of Orn caused much destruction amongst the opposing forces and were particularly deadly to the brittle Xkrah. Nevertheless, the Xkrah were present in uncountable numbers and the overall damage was not particularly large. Proteus unicorns charged under the aerial cover of a stinging insect swarm sent by Lupus to distract and hinder the Nevahir. The insects began stinging at the eyes of the Nevahir and it looked like the eastern flank of the triumvirate army might crumble, as the unicorns began tearing into it. Agathis, however, sent air elementals to blow away the insects and soon the vastly greater numbers of the Nevahir began to prevail. The phalanxes of the Horkville advanced towards the Xkrah and sustained surprisingly little damage from the deadly light beams, due to their tight formation and polished shields. They were, unfortunately, countered by a group of Slith's ghosts that were sent in. The ghosts could pass through the shields and could paralyze with a touch. Furthermore, Agathis was able to march and scorch the shields of the Horkville with flame elementals, rendering them non-reflective and once again, vulnerable to the deadly light beams of the Xkrah. Seeing no advantage in retreat, Aegis ordered the legions of the Horkville and the hordes of Skrilla to charge the enemy Xkrah and Rajamala, feeling that the light beam long-range attacks of the Xkrah would not be as useful close-in. His strategy proved correct, as many of the melded Xkrah were hacked apart into weaker pieces and quickly exterminated. The Rajamala were able to actually disarm many of the Skrilla using their whips, but the Skrilla were formidable in both armed and unarmed combat and it became apparent that this contest was evenly matched. At this point, the Alder, led by Hansilner and Jansart, took a hand and began weaving magic and skill in a pattern that began to systematically annihilate the Skrilla and the Horkville. Before more damage could be done, Aegis ordered all his forces to retreat and regroup. The triumvirate did the same, and as night fell, the first day of the War of Humanity drew to a close. The day's battle had taken a much heavier toll on the Elder God's forces and things looked grim. The Horkville were greatly reduced, as were the Skrilla. The unicorns had managed to survive reasonably well, as had the well-equipped mercenaries of Orn. The Quidanner had suffered few casualties. On the triumvirate side, the Xkrah were greatly weakened and considering total withdrawal, for they had not anticipated such massive losses. Many Nevahir had been cut down by the unicorns and insects, but just as many unicorns, proportionately, had been cut down. The Skrilla had suffered grave losses at the hands of the Rajamala, whose power had been dramatically magnified by the magical aid of the Alder. Many have wondered why the Elder Gods did not directly participate in the battle this first day despite the fact that their triumvirate counterparts were taking a direct hand. The reason was simply that they were still trapped behind Larillan and Kellis' magical field and had spent the entire day tearing down the barrier. That night, Thoth's serpentine Quisilis assassins crept across the wastelands of Nishnatober and performed their deadly trade upon the forces of the triumvirate. In a triumph of stealth and deception, the massed forces of the Rajamala were murdered in their sleep. This was their greatest hour, for death was their pleasure and this was truly an orgy of blood. However, sleepless vampire guards, set by Slith, detected the Quisilis killers and, arousing the rest of the undead forces, began to steal their life forces and turn the Quisilis into undead. The Quisilis were wiped out that night and became martyrs, slain, while worshipping their beloved god of death.